Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here. Time for another Patreon-sponsored Blind Reaction. And this one comes to you courtesy of Zavin, who has requested that I react to the second half of 7/27/1978 by Lasagnacat. So, yeah, gotta continue this. Last time this glorious man went and cracked the code. He found the answers hidden within the panels of an unassuming Garfield comic strip. And it was something to behold. It was an eye-opening experience, and we're only halfway through, which is the great thing. There's more, there's more hidden meaning and depth to be gleaned from this amazing comic strip, and I can't wait to have it all laid out for me, to be guided through. Through the magic of the pipe strip, and just see how we can possibly keep this going for another half hour. I don't know, but it's been amazing so far, and I'm really excited to watch the rest. So let's go ahead and get this started. Here we go.
When I was a young man, remember now, I first saw this comic when I was 18 years old.
Oh.
Ages ago. But I was youthful, vibrant. For weeks I denied that a comic strip was having such a profound effect on me. I was much like John Arbuckle. In this middle panel, he says, "Now where could my path be?"
Yes.
You can look into his eyes, his half-lowered eyes, and think to yourself, "Now, surely, John, surely you cannot be this naive. This is nothing new for you." And if you've read more of the Garfield comic strips by Jim Davis, you'd understand what I am saying now. Garfield the cat does things like this all the time.
Yeah.
He'll take things from John. Food, items, anything. This is his very nature. So you see this, and you want to say, "John Arbuckle, come now. You are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself and to all of us if you pretend to have not any idea where your pipe has gone. Perhaps you think you left it somewhere else, but you're not so forgetful. You are lying to yourself. Yes. You are lying to yourself, John Arbuckle. You know that Garfield has the pipe. Somewhere deep down, you know this. You don't even need to think the question."
Sure he does.
And that was me when I saw this strip. 1 week passed, and each morning I'd open my drawer and slam it shut again. I would go to look at the comic, but I'd pause and think, "Oh no, I don't need this comic. I don't need to look at it." But there I was, lying to myself. I did need to see it, and so I did. It's cathartic. You give in, and that is the transition from the second panel of life to the third panel of life. It is a simple story structure, the passage from the second act to the third, the twilight of things. John gives in to his suspicions. He knows the truth. He's always known the truth. He yells out, "Garfield! Garfield! Garfield!" There's like pressure from a steam valve being released. The buildup is unbearable, and then it's gone. So it is like this. When I speak about the truth, the light, the radiance.
I like the glow.
This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is the essence of this brilliant work of art. The practical mixing, meeting, agreeing with the spiritual, it is all here. But spirituality is not an easy thing to confront. You might find yourself able to wrap your mind around a simple math problem or a basic newspaper article, but intellect is much less subjective. What is spirituality? And how have I found spiritual peace and serenity in Garfield?
That is the question.
A long time ago, after I encountered the pipe strip, I spent some time, as I mentioned before, soul searching. When something impacts you or alters your very perception so greatly, there is a long period of confusion and recovery time. It's as if you don't know who you are, and that can be a very scary prospect, especially if you thought you had a good grasp on that sort of thing. Imagine if Jim Davis did not know who he was. Would he be capable of shaping the cultural landscape as he's done? No, of course he wouldn't. And how about his characters? John. What if Jim Davis suddenly woke up and didn't know who John was? What if he couldn't make the informed decisions to accurately depict Garfield's personality because he could no longer specify or demarcate the boundaries of Garfield's behavior? What kind of comic would that be? You see? So draw the parallel. I saw this comic, and yes, I was disoriented. And if I didn't reconcile this issue with myself, what kind of person would I be? Undoubtedly dire circumstances, but remember, this was not a math.
We are the comic
This
now.
was not an article. This was not something I could just figure out. And as skeptical as I was, I realized that faith and spirituality were avenues that required exploring. At first, I tried long nights reading Garfield by candlelight.
Oh, the floating John
Automatic
head.
meditation settings while thinking of Garfield, but nothing snapped. Nothing clicked. I still felt lost. But I kept it up. I hired a shaman and a young personal yogi Sikh guru, Avram Das Singh Sahib. I pushed and pushed, determined to find myself.
Next natural step.
And then a miracle happened. Upon retrieving my morning paper to clip the Garfield comic, I noticed a young girl selling lemonade 2 houses down. She sat occupied at her stand. She had no customers in sight, so I approached and saw that she was coloring. I looked at her drawing. 3 rectangular boxes.
Oh.
A man in a blue shirt, an orange cat.
Oh.
I knew what this was. Even in her crude scribbles, I knew exactly what this was. She was drawing a Garfield comic. I looked at her words and I saw that in her strip, John asked Garfield to retrieve a newspaper. Funny, since I've done just that for myself. Garfield is sarcastic, but agrees to it. He returns and calls John Sahib. John exclaims that the paper is all chewed up, but then Garfield says, and I quote, Sahib asks fish, paper is wet. Sahib asks cat, paper is holy. I remember the words and ran back to my house. I thought, how odd that Sahib shows up in the strip, and my spiritual advisor's name is Avram Das Singh Sahib. Coincidence, surely, but nonetheless, I spent the next 16 hours poring through my clipped Garfield comics, looking for the strip this young girl had been coloring. I couldn't find it. And I eventually fell asleep right on my kitchen table. The next morning, I retrieved my paper again, and I clipped the Garfield comic. The date was July 12th, 1983, and there it was. The Sahib strip in all its glory.
Okay.
The girl had been drawing the next day's strip. Well, I ran right out of my house. I ran back to where she was, but she was gone, and in place of the lemonade stand was a for sale sign.
Oh.
I rushed back to my house to call Avram, but
Crazy.
I was informed that he'd moved away as well.
Oh. The plot
For
thickens.
several hours, then it all connected for me. It was meant to be. It was meant to be this way. Jim Davis, John, Garfield. It was always meant to be this way for me.
Yeah.
They move to the forefront and everything else fades away. Everything else, the girl, the lemonade stand, Avram's Das Singh Sahib, it all existed to show me the way, and when I'd found the way, everything else melted away. It was a beautiful miracle.
Indeed.
July 1978, the day I first saw the pipe strip. It was the first day of my life. Then that day, July 12th, 1983, was the second day of my life. I've never looked back. Garfield has transformed me. And I am a man born anew because of Garfield. When I was in my mid-30s, I was interviewed for a documentary. It was a documentary on the subject of cat behavior.
Okay.
Now, I have had cats my whole life. I have 3 cats now, and at the time of this documentary interview, I had 4 cats. I sat down for the interview and was joined by a veterinarian who specialized in feline. Dr. Carolyn Wilmans was her name, I believe. And the doctor discussed color blindness in animals and how it affects their behavior. She specifically brought up the fact that cats are red-green colorblind. They can see colors, but they can't tell the difference between red and green. And look at the color choice in this strip here. Garfield sits on a green floor behind a pinkish red wall. I heard this and I immediately pulled a copy of the comic from my wallet to show to the doctor. I moved so fast I'm sure I nearly scared her. I pointed at the paper and said, "Look, like this, look at this here, this cat, Garfield, he's colorblind, he must be. That must be the answer here. Like this." As overexcited as I was, I managed to take in her response. She said, "Yes, a cat in this room would have a hard time differentiating the wall from the floor. Add to that cat's known spatial confusion, and you have the makings of a cat rage room."
Oh.
Now, she informed me this isn't exactly common knowledge among cat owners, but a seasoned cat owner or someone particularly perceptive will have picked up on it. So what's incredible here is not only is Garfield's behavior symbolic of the devil and all the evil constructs in the world, but
Okay.
but also
Natural conclusion.
science and scientific fact. Look at that. You cannot spell fact without cat.
Yes.
Just some wordplay, but getting back on track.
Oh.
And you can't spell track without cat. Okay. Okay. I digress. I gotcha. Enough kidding around. It is established here that Garfield is in a rage.
Now, this is a serious video. Can't have any kidding around.
Hatred caused by color blindness. We know the what. We know the why. But let us examine the how. The how of his rage is particularly interesting here. We've looked at his posture and called it powerful, in control, statuesque, etc., etc. Composed rage. It's peculiar, and I've talked to a number of psychologists and psychiatrists and even a couple of anger management therapists about this concept. Do we see the same kind of behavior in a human? Is Garfield representative of something more specific than just chaos and rage? Deciphering this is going to take some perseverance for sure. The psychologist pointed to a phenomenon in humans, and yes, I believe one of the anger management counselors brought it up as well. The idea that people oftentimes will bottle their rage. Garfield the cat here, well, he could be bottling his anger inside, shoving it deep into his cat gut to ignore and deal with at a later time. Well, no, that's not exactly right. Garfield has already acted out. He's already stolen the pipe. He's smoking the pipe. He's already dealt with his anger. He's already lashed out. So, psychologically, what is going on here? What is this cat doing, and how does it impact his owner, John Arbuckle, psychologically?
These are important questions.
He's acting on his anger, but is this passive anger or aggressive anger? Passive. It is passive because if Garfield has a problem with John specifically, he's choosing a passive way of dealing with that problem. He's not confronted John and said, "John, I have a problem with the way you've decorated this room. As a cat, I am colorblind, and this sends me into a rage."
I'm not sure he could properly communicate that.
And I don't like it. I want you to change it. Instead of that confrontational approach, though, Garfield has chosen to steal John's pipe. And that in turn angers John. But John decides to be aggressively angry and yell at Garfield. So now instead of a calm conversation between two respectful parties, you have two heated, angry individuals, each with a problem and no direct line to solving it. The layered emotions here tell a story with tight, focused brevity that would make Hemingway weep.
Yes!
Entire drama in just 3 panels.
I'm sure.
But let's not be remiss and miss the humor of the situation. The absurdity of it all. For certainly there is a reason the visual shorthand for drama includes both a crying mask and a laughing mask. Comedy and tragedy complement each other and meld together to create drama. Tension, the height of humanity, the peak of art that reflects back to us our own condition. And here, in its basest form, we can laugh at this comic. Yes, comic, in which a cat smokes a pipe. When is the last time you've seen such a thing in your life?
I never have.
Presume.
Yes.
I certainly never have. The Greek muse Thalia's presence is strong in this work of art here. Comedy. It is comedy. And if you look at the structure again, you'll see the
yes,
perfect
it's
form
hilarious.
of thirds works magically for the transmission of yes, a joke. The joke is as old as time. Even cavemen told jokes. And the joke here is that John has lost his pipe. Well, he thinks he has. But lo and behold, it is the cat Garfield who has the pipe.
Great joke.
Surprise, the cat is smoking. Again, the transition from setup to punchline takes place between the second and third panels. But make no mistake, the comic is more than just a comic. Yes, it is funny. Of course it is. It is operating at the height of sophisticated
sure,
on par
I'll take
with
your
any
word
of
for it.
Shakespeare's piercing wit. On the one hand, Garfield the comic with John the man. Humor is art. The other hand, Garfield comic with John the man, stirring, no, riveting, drama. As with everything, it is tension and release. Tension and release. A cycle. I keep returning to this idea because it is so omnipresent. Yes, you could, and yes, I have done this on more than one occasion. You could print this comic strip on a giant piece of paper. The dimensions would be something like...
I'm not surprised.
34 inches by 11 inches. Now tape the ends together with the comic facing inward. Stick your head in the middle of this Garfield comic loop and read. Start at the first panel. John is reading the newspaper. He feels for something on the end table. Second panel, he sets the newspaper down. Something is not right. Now, where could my pipe be, he thinks. And then the payoff. The third panel.
Getting a good job with the
Garfield takes
effects here.
John's pipe and is smoking it. But the paper is in a loop around your head. So that you can see that once again, John is in his seat reading the paper. And so on and so on. You could literally read the comic strip for eternity.
I'm sure you could.
I've spent many a relaxing Sunday afternoon reading this strip over and over. I'm reminded of the Portuguese death carvings, which always begin and end with the same scrawled image. So this idea of repetition, and the beginning being the end, and the end being the beginning, it's not new. It is an ageless tradition among the best storytellers humanity has ever offered. And I'm not wrong to include cartoonist Jim Davis in that exalted set for this particular strip alone. I'm not foolish enough to deny that great art is subjective, divisive even, and that some people see this Garfield comic and shrug with no real reaction. But I will say that I believe everyone in the world should see it. At the very least, see it. You should all see it. Read it. Spend some time with it. Spend an hour reading it. What's an hour? Yes, you could watch some television program. You could play some fast-paced video games.
Watch this video?
Games. Yes, you could do all those things. But it's just an hour. And if you give this strip a
It's
chance...
a meta commentary there, isn't it?
If you look into John
It's just an
Arbuckle's
hour.
eyes, if you look into John Arbuckle's soul,
And that's weird.
you might find that you'll really be looking into your own soul. It's self-discovery. That is what I'm talking about here. You have the opportunity, the possibility. It could change you. Don't be afraid. You know, just last week I was eating lunch near the municipal court, like I do every Thursday, and there was a plumbing van.
Okay.
A plumbing van parked out in front, and a man, a plumber, would step out from the court and retrieve something from his van every so often. A few times this happened. I thought nothing of it, just a plumber doing some work at the municipal court. But then he came out and looked through his van, and it was clear. He couldn't find something. noticed and thought, well, that's sort of similar to the Garfield comic in a way.
Yeah.
Someone looks for something, can't find it. But yes, that probably happens billions of times a day around the world.
I would think so.
But then this plumber put his hands on his hips. Then he scratched his head.
Oh no.
He said aloud, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" Well, at this, I leaped off the bench. Sandwich still in hand, and I rushed over. I shouted, "What was that you said?" He looked at me and said, "What?" "I can't find my pipe wrench." And I said, No, say it like how you just said it." He scratched his head and repeated, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" I slapped him on the back and said, "Garfield!" He looked so confused, so I said it again.
Yeah.
Then I said, "Your orange cat took it." And I laughed and laughed. And he smiled and went back into the courtroom. I walked away knowing that the plumber and I, two complete strangers, bonded over this Garfield comic.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Life imitates art and becomes a common ground. I have a feeling that if I see this plumber again, we'll be sharing stories like two old friends. Because we've been united by art. We have a common love for Jim Davis and his characters, his writings. The humor, the drama, that rascal Garfield the cat. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering what I was having for lunch that day, it was a ham sandwich with an apple and potato chips.
Good to
And
know.
a soda as well.
Very useful
Important to view
information.
the pipe strip in philosophical terms.
Yes.
We've touched briefly on the notion of existentialism. That theme is very prevalent in this strip. Garfield is, in fact, a modern existential anti-hero. But if Garfield embodies
often
the
said this
bewilderment
myself.
in a meaningless life, what is John? What are the telltale signs that informs John's philosophical standpoint? His approach? What style of thinking he represents? John is depicted as being grounded in the material world. A world of things. He is surrounded by objects, and he touches these objects. He interacts with them. The newspaper, the end table, the chair, his clothes, all these physical things make up John's world. In some sense, even his cat Garfield is an object to him, a thing. The first ideology that comes to mind when thinking of objects in the tangible world is pragmatism. Is John Arbuckle a pragmatist? His beliefs stem from a useful, coherent view of his environment. A sort of cause and effect understanding of his world helps him. A, deduce that his pipe is missing, and B, catch his cat Garfield using the pipe. This kind of empirical and logical thinking lends credence to the idea that John is indeed a pragmatist. Although it is hard to entirely ignore the rest of the Garfield comic canon. While Garfield is consistently anarchic and embraces the chaos and absurdity of life, John Arbuckle exhibits an erratic, unpredictable mix of philosophical behaviors. At times he is borderline, delusional, an idealist, an almost slap-happy version of Don Quixote. Other moments he is rigid, nearly to the point of being obsessive, somewhat like a structuralist, and certainly has streaks of sarcasm and negativity that might classify him as a skeptic. But isn't there some universal truth in this approach? How can any one man, how can John Arbuckle be just one thing? How can any of us be just one thing? We're an amalgamation of ideas and emotions, conducts and functions, thoughts and feelings. John Arbuckle may very well inhabit tenets of nearly every major philosophical tract known to man. We all might. Characters are reduced to make them recognizable, definable. A story needs a good guy, a story needs a bad guy. But rarely is one person defined in such black and white terms. Even Garfield, with all his bad behavior, Machiavellian motivation, and general ne'er-do-well attitude,
Gotta love the
kind and
flames.
thoughtful. You just have to find that rare strip. Speaking philosophically about the entire Garfield franchise, it's an incredibly accurate depiction of life. Its bold lines and bright colors are merely a facade, a red herring, a lie. This cartoon is not a cartoon at all. It is not caricature. It is not caricature despite adopting caricature as its visual style and tone. But I don't really like to speak in broad, sweeping generalizations about Garfield.
Yeah.
The comic has been running for over 30 years.
Can't do that.
And to try and boil that all down is just, well, it's impossible. I think the only way, and any historian worth his salt will agree with me, is to look at individual moments, isolated instances, single comic strips. Can I discuss this one strip in the context of the entire run of Garfield? Yes, I do that just as a film historian might analyze one movie in relation to the history of all movies, or a war enthusiast might look at a single battle's impact on an entire war. The pipe strip is just an instance in lives of John Garfield. Perhaps John is not a pragmatist at all. Let's look at this again. Maybe John is exhibiting the traits of a rationalist thinker. His question, "Now where could my pipe be?" is a clue that his thought process stems from the early rationalist questions posed by René Descartes. The well-known quote, "I think, therefore I am," attributed to Descartes is applicable. Another close look at the strip, and we see that Jim Davis chose to draw John thinking his question. "Now where could my pipe be?" John does not speak this question aloud. So Jim Davis is also exploring the mind-body duality. John's question operates on the level of a literal question, but it also examines the nature of reality. Jim Davis's epistemological approach tells us something about the human condition. John's thoughts remain the focal point of this strip. The comic is quite literally centered around his thought. Now where could my pipe be? This is his reality. This is where cognition and the power and function of the mind take over. As Plato believed, the
Going
body is
deep
just
here.
a shell for John Arbuckle. Yes, he can use his physical body to read his paper or cross his legs, but these inputs of touch, sight, hearing, etc., these senses are the triggers of the mind. As we see here, the mind is something greater. It is the originator of ideas, and ideas are forever, immortal. Immortality through thought, a major theme in literature and philosophy. And isn't that what Mr. Jim Davis himself has achieved? Will he live forever? The universe will continue to spread and spread outward, and entropy will turn a chaotic infinity into a homogeneous, controlled system. This will take billions of years, and in that time, humans will push technology to heights we can't imagine. We'll explore and inhabit space and occupy more and more of the universe, just as time allowed our ancestors to multiply in numbers and populate more and more of the Earth. And as the specific people come and go, their physical bodies will be born and grow and die, but their thoughts will remain. And Jim Davis's comics, his glorious Garfield comics, are recorded ideas of his that will still be here. Even when the Earth is no longer inhabitable, and humanity has long since moved away to bigger planets, they'll carry with them a record we all keep. Mark my words. And look at what we've started. What is the internet? What is the online world if not a record? A never-ending feed of ideas, immortal ideas, forever placed in the ether of dualism. What is an idea? And where does it live? And how does it manifest itself? Can it live forever? Will it live forever outside of these physical husks of ours, our bodies? And John Arbuckle and Garfield started merely as thoughts. They've become so much more. That old cliche rings true. They've taken on a life of their own. And life may not be what we think. Life brings to mind beating heart, breathing lungs, blinking eyes. But the real life is in our imaginations. And who better embodies the definition of imagination if not a simple man, a cartoonist who puts his ideas to paper so they may live on, that our children, and our children's children, and their children's children's children
The moon!
wealth of ideas that have accumulated thus far. They will plug themselves into an information grid and they will have access. They will read every Garfield comic. 80,000 years from now, a child will see simple
sure they will.
Reading a newspaper. He will feel around for something, but that something is not there. He will lift his head and think, now where could my pipe be? And Garfield will be smoking the pipe. And John will yell, Garfield! And what then? 80,000 years from now? The child reading this comic will smile. And that smile will transcend space and time and the physical limitations of this existence, whatever it may be. However many dimensions exist, there will always be Garfield. And there will always be its creator, Jim Davis.
Dramatic finish. It's through art, and through art only, that we can realize our perfection. Wow. Oh. Okay. I feel like my life has been changed. That video, it was, it was, it was just something else. There are no words. It, I really love the conviction of this guy, whoever he is. He's, he just really sells it, and it's amazing. Yeah. No, that was quite the brilliant piece, I gotta say. I'm interested where this idea stemmed from. I think, obviously, there's an undercurrent of satire here, which I think is where this came from. Because this comic, I think this time more than last time, we focused on, or I don't know. We focused on a lot of stuff last time too, but, yeah, just the fact that the comic really at the end of the day isn't very good. It's not really funny at all. It's just so basic. And, just going through this hour-long, grandiose rambling over this is kind of amazing. I don't know. Some part of me really loves this. It's special. And, yeah, they really, really had him sell it. It was, because it wouldn't have worked with a lesser performance. This guy, though, he really, really made you want to believe him. And it's just so absurd. Yeah, all in all, this video is something I'm glad I've seen now. It was pretty incredible, and I think we all learned something today about the way the world works. And yeah, it all comes back to the pipe strip. It's just kind of amazing that they were able to keep this going for a full hour. This bit, it's great. And I said it last time, but I really do hope that Jim Davis actually saw this video, because that would be hilarious. I mean, I know it's kind of in its way making fun of him, but still. I don't know, but good stuff. I just I don't know. I got a kick out of this. It was fun. Hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.